Hello and welcome to Precon Decon, the video series where I deconstruct the pre-constructed decks of Magic the Gathering's history. This video I'm going to start looking at the Jace versus Chandra duel deck, so let's dive in, start looking at that one. Yeah, it was pretty exciting when this one got announced because obviously it was a continuation of the duel deck series, which started with Elves versus Goblins, and when it first came out I was unsure if they were going to kind of keep going with that or if it was going to be kind of a one and done thing, but also because it was two Planeswalkers, and this is at a time, you've got to bear in mind that Planeswalkers were still kind of new to the game. The time this was released, we only had 8 Planeswalkers, I think, in the whole game. We had the Law in 5, and then we had the 3 who had just been in Shards of Alara. So this was actually kind of exciting and kind of cemented the fact that, like, yep, Planeswalkers are kind of here to stay. And it was also exciting because it was kind of an easy, fairly budget-friendly way of getting these planeswalkers, because they were still new and people were like really getting excited about them and kind of over ranking them, which is really kind of adorable looking back at the Law in 5 and kind of how kind of just average they are by today's standards. So yeah, this was kind of it was an easy budget way to pick them up, and I bought 2 of this pack because I wanted 2 Chandras, I wanted 2 Jaces, and obviously the other contents of the deck. A really little fun bit of trivia about this is obviously we get like anime art cards like kind of all the times these days, and like secret lairs and or like alternate arts and stuff. But this there was a special version of this product where Jace and Chandra both had this kind of exclusive anime art, and this is the only dual deck that did it, as far as I'm aware. No other dual decks did this, where they had the 2 face cards get alternate anime art. I think this was only for Jace versus Chandra. So yeah, a little bit of trivia there that I thought you might enjoy. So just to give you some idea of like kind of what cards were around at the time, it was released just after Shards of Alara, so cast your mind back to 2008. Like I said, Planeswalkers are still kind of new. So yeah, it was really exciting to get kind of a 2 planeswalkers like facing off in a dual deck like this, and also it gave me a lot of hope for other future ones and like what other planeswalker combinations we might see. It's kind of interesting. I'll just quickly say as well that the for the most part, like all the dual decks normally are just kind of like, oh, what if X fought Y, that kind of thing, like Elves versus Goblins, say, or as we're going to see in the next one, Divine versus Demonic, like those kind of loose themes. From what I can recall, like all the Planeswalker ones, all the dual decks with Jace, like this one, Jace versus Chandra, are specifically tied to moments in the ongoing lore, the ongoing story. I think that was kind of like expanded on in like maybe like a little leaflet that was included with the product, but it was it is a time that these 2 planeswalkers have like canonically like butted heads against each other. So I guess it's kind of like reenacting that sort of moment from history. So there we go. That sets the tone for the other Planeswalker dual decks going forward. Anyway, let's dive in. Start looking at Jace's deck, which is mono blue, obviously. So 24 creatures, 9 instants, 1 sorcery, 1 artifact, obviously 1 Planeswalker, and 24 land. And then we've got a mana curve off to the side there, which is all over the place, and we'll explore why it's all over the place as we get into it. So, first of all, we got a single Jace Beleren, original Lorwyn 5 Jace, the only Jace at the time. So 1 and double blue for a 3 loyalty Planeswalker. He's got a +2, everyone draws a card, -1 to make target player draw a card, and -10 to make someone mill 20, which definitely raised a few eyebrows when it came out, because mill was kind of it was doable. Like you could build like a mill deck back around this when this was released, or when Jace was released, but it was a lot harder to do than it is now, because like we get a lot more like mill effects these days. It's been obviously it's been keyworded, it's used a lot more. Back then it was kind of I don't know, it was just more difficult to do. So yeah, Jace was definitely in here, be like, oh wow, I can make someone mill 20 and that'd be really cool. And yeah, don't know whether or not you ever got up to -10. I just used him just to do the +2 to make everyone draw, because the reason I wanted like the 2 Jaces here, I had a Jace that I got from a booster pack as well, and I wanted to do like a kind of a friendly like group mill deck where it was based around like Jace and like the Lorwyn enchantment, Forced Fruition, that makes people draw like 7 cards whenever they cast a spell. So it was like friendly mill. It's like, you can't be angry at me for milling you, like you're drawing cards. That's like the opposite of mill. You get too many cards now. So that was a really fun deck. I really enjoyed using that one. But yeah, I think original Jace is like, I think it's just perfectly fine. Obviously, he's got no way of protecting himself, which isn't great. The +2 is okay. Obviously you just build up to the -10, and again it's not something that like wins the game like a Planeswalker Ultimate should do most of the time. Like, I mean, obviously milling 20 is really good, but it doesn't immediately, it's not like an emblem that makes like your side of the board really strong or anything. But I think like original Jace, like for being the first mono blue Planeswalker, I think is fairly solid. Even by today's standards, I think is okay. Probably not like mythic rare standard, like by today's standards, but like he's okay. He's okay. It was baby steps. It was early days for Planeswalkers. Right, then the rest of the cards. So he's got Guile from Lorwyn, one of the elemental incarnations. 3 in triple blue for a 6/6. Sort of has Super Menace, which can't be blocked except by 3 or more creatures. It's weird to see this ability in blue, actually. And I say it makes sense because Guile is all tricky and it needs 3 people to kind of block it and stuff. But it's weird to see like this kind of Menace variant in blue. Yeah. And it has the thing that makes Guile stand out. If a spell and ability you control would counter a spell, you instead exile that spell, and you can then play it in future without paying its mana cost, which is really, really interesting. There's obviously quite a lot of counter magic in the deck. It's a mono blue deck. But yeah, this is like a really, really fun effect, honestly. Obviously it needs to match up perfectly. You need to obviously have the counter magic, you need to keep Guile around. But yeah, I think it's like a pretty fun effect. And like even if that never goes off, it's a big 6/6 that's like really hard to block. So yeah, it's a potential finisher. And has the normal incarnation thing of if it would go into graveyard from anywhere, it gets shuffled back into the library. We've got a single Quicksilver Dragon, 4 and double blue for a 5/5 flyer, so just like a big flyer, which is obviously perfectly fine. And this extra ability, you can pay 1 blue. If a spell only has 1 target and that target is Quicksilver Dragon, change that spell's target to another creature. So it's really nice that obviously the Chandra deck has like a lot of burn in it. So as long as you keep like blue open, you can just like this is essentially immune to burn spells. So that's really nice. Also got Morph, which is kind of like a minor theme throughout the deck. Got a lot of Morph creatures. So Morph, if you don't know, you can play this face down as a 2/2 creature with no name or color for like 3 colorless mana, and you can turn it face up at any time for its Morph cost, which is 4 and a blue. The idea of this then, like, maybe like the person playing the Chandra deck says, like, I'm going to target that face down creature with my burn spell. You flip this face up and then use its ability to then bounce the spell onto something else. So yeah, I think it's pretty cool. I wouldn't say you necessarily have to morph it. There are definitely some creatures in the deck that need to be turned face up to get their full benefit. I think Quicksilver Dragon is perfectly fine. You just play it as normal, and it's a big 5/5 flyer, and kind of helps you close out the game that way. Because the Chandra deck, I think, would have like a real trouble trying to deal with this, honestly. But yeah, I think it's kind of cool to include in here. Right, then we've got 2 Fathom Seers, 1 the blue for a 1/3. It has Morph as well, but its Morph cost is essentially, I was going to say it's free. It's not, it doesn't cost any mana. You have to return islands back to hand, but then when it gets turned face up, you draw 2 cards. So this is a reference to an older card called Gush, which actually got reprinted in this deck from Mercadian Masks. I'm not sure if I love it, honestly, because... I suppose they can be tapped islands. They can be islands used before. It's it costs no mana. It does draw you 2 cards. I guess it's fine. It's okay. But man, you got to really, really be sure like you're not setting yourself back too much when you do it. But yeah, I think it's overall fine. And if absolutely necessary, you can just play it as a 1/3 like blocker for 2 mana if you really, really need to. Got a single Void Mage Apprentice, 1 in the blue for a 1/1. When it's turned face up, you counter target spell, and you can morph it for 2 in double blue. So kind of expensive to turn face up and counter a spell, but I mean, at least it's kind of it's a counter spell you've got sitting there on the board until you need it, I suppose. There's no limit on what you can counter as well, so that's quite nice. Yeah, it's all right. It's kind of like it's a reprint from Onslaught, so it's like the first time they sort of tried morph. So like maybe the cost is a little too high, maybe. Maybe these days would expect this to be a bit cheaper, but I think it's okay. I think it's fine for the time. We've got 2 Wall of Deceit, 1 in the blue for a 0/5 defender. It has more for a single blue, so you can play it face down and turn it face up for really cheap. It's got the really fun ability where you can pay 3 to turn it face down again, which I think is really fun because if you then need it to attack, you can turn it face down. It's not a wall anymore, it doesn't have defender, so then it can happily swing. So yeah, I think that's a pretty fun ability to have. And also, it just being a 0/5 defender is, again, kind of like the Quicksilver Dragon. This is like kind of a pain for the Chandra deck to deal with because that's got like a lot of small creatures. So would kind of find it hard to get over a 0/5 wall. We've got Willbender, perhaps one of the best morph creatures that was around at the time. So it's 1 in the blue for a 1/2. You'll pretty much never play it without morphing it. This is kind of what I was talking about, like with Quicksilver Dragon, is that some creatures really, really need to be morphed and turned face up to get their benefit. Because Willbender's ability is really, really good. So 1 in the blue, when it you morph it, and when it gets turned face up, you change the target of a spell, which is really, really good. And it led to this thing because like Willbender at the time, when it first released back in Onslaught, was basically one of the better morph creatures. So it's like, and all the others were like sort of okay, but like not as on the same sort of par as Willbender. So normally it'd be like, I'm going to play this face down, and like everyone would know it'd be Willbender because that was the only one kind of casting face down and then morphing. So the kind of surprise element was gone. But like it's still like a good deterrent to like leave there, and there'd be a whole bunch of counterplay like trying to fake out the Willbender and stuff. So kind of fun, and it's a real shame I think there's only one in the deck. Got a single fledgling Morcor, 3 in a blue for a 2/2 flyer, and taps to do 1 damage to target creature or player. Kind of weird to see this obviously on a blue card. It's an ability we associate obviously more with red. But this is a reference to an old card from Tempest called Morcor, which was basically exactly this card, except it was a 3/3 and had this ability to tap to do 1 damage. It's got morph as well, but I think this is one where like you probably wouldn't bother morphing it. I would just play it for 3 in a blue and just have it be a 2/2 flyer with the ping ability just ready to go. A single Brine Elemental, Mr. Pickles himself. So 4 and double blue for a 5/4. It's got morph for 5 and double blue. When it's turned face up, each opponent skips their next untapped step, which is obviously pretty strong. And again, it's like it's like Willbender, like you pretty much have to like do this face down and turn it face up to get like its full effect. This is part of a kind of infamous old combo called Pickles, which I can't remember the exact details, but it relies on like a creature copying Brine Elemental. I think Vesivan Doppelganger, the one that was in Time Spiral, maybe the one that also has a morph effect. Basically, it would turn face up, it would copy Brine Elemental ability to make someone skip the untap step, and then it could flip itself then face down, I think. I'll put a link to the full combo below so you can take a look at that. But yeah, we haven't got that available to us in this deck, so Brine Elemental is just here to kind of do like a soft like Time Walk ability, just skip an untap step. But yeah, he's alright, and also he's a fairly biggish creature anyway. Right, and then we leave all the morph creatures, and then we veer weirdly into like just a couple of suspend cards. So we've got Errant Ephemeron, 6 and a blue for a 4/4 with flying. It has suspend 4 for 1 and a blue. So suspend, if you don't know, and I don't blame you for not knowing, you can pay the suspend cost, which is 1 and a blue. You exile it from your hand. You put 4 counters on it. Every upkeep, you take a counter off it when it has no counters, or when the last one is removed. You get to play it without casting its mana cost, and it has haste, so you can swing with it immediately. So it's kind of like, well, I can't cast it now because it's 7 mana, but I'll put it to one side and I'll see it in like 4 turns. So kind of like like Plot or Foretell, like we have in more recent sets. This was kind of, I feel like, the first attempt at that kind of thing of like, I'll have it later, like pay by installments kind of. But yeah, I think Errant Ephemeron is all right. It's weird there's only 1 in here, but could have maybe benefit from having 2, but I think it's okay. They've got Riftwing Cloudscape, which is another suspend creature, 3 and double blue for a 2/2, suspend for 3, and when it comes into play, you get to bounce a permanent to owner's hand. Can bounce lands if you so desire. But yeah, there's an option there. Again, only 1 of them, which I feel is maybe a bit of a loss. And then after the suspend creatures, we're going to go into a different gimmick here with the evoke elementals from Lorwyn. So we've got a single Ether Snipe, which is 5 and a blue for a 4/4. When it comes into play, you return non-land permanent to its owner's hand. And here's evoke for 1 and double blue. So evoke is, as it says here in the Rhine text, you can cast it for its evoke cost, and if you do, it's immediately sacrificed when it comes into play. So you get the comes into play effect to bounce something, and then it just immediately dies. And this was a big thing in like the Lorwyn elementals, not all the elementals to be fair, like the primordial elementals, I guess you want to call them that, where it's a nice flexibility. You either cast it as a big creature with the effect, or if you desperately need to do the bounce effect, then you can do that for fairly cheapish, I suppose. And then we've got 2 Muldrifter, which is the other evoke elemental here. So 4 and a blue for a 2/2 flying. When it comes to play, draw 2 cards, and you can evoke it for 2 and a blue. Muldrifter's great. I think we'll all agree that we all like Muldrifter. It's just like really nice flexibility that it's either the 2/2 flyer and draw 2, or you can just draw 2 for like the same cost as like at the time like Divination or Council of the Soratami, that kind of thing. Yeah, I think Muldrifter is pretty great. I think better to play it as is, because then it's a flyer, which again the Chandra deck has some difficulty dealing with. We've got 2 Mana War, which is like a really nice reprint from Visions. So 2 and a blue for 2/2. When it comes to play, you bounce a creature. That's just really efficient for 3 mana in blue. So yeah, really like that. Really like that's here. Single Air Elemental, classic Air Elemental, 3 and double blue for a 4/4 flyer. Again, kind of hard for the Chandra deck to deal with, honestly. It's just being a big flyer with no frills in particular, but really hard to deal with, honestly. And then we get into some weirder cards in the deck, honestly. So we have a Martyr of Frost. This is from Cold Snap. So 1 blue mana for a 1/1. You make 2 and reveal X blue cards from your hand, sacrifice it, and counter target spell unless its controller pays X. So there's a whole cycle of these Martyrs from Cold Snap, and one of them, I think Martyr of Sands, the white one, has like some notoriety as being in like combo decks at the time. Because like you would gain a bunch of life, sacrifice it, and then use was it Proclamation of Rebirth or Enduring Ideal or something like that? You get it back and you just keep repeatedly doing its effect to just gain a load of life. Not sure if Martyr of Frost got any of the same kind of, saw the same kind of attention. I think it's all right. I'm not. It's hard to say, I suppose, isn't it? Because like it's giving away information. You're revealing cards in hand, which typically you don't want to do. But then it is also like a counter spell, I suppose. It's on a 1/1 body. I think it's okay. Let's just go with that. I think it's okay. We've got a single Ophidian, which is from Weatherlight, I want to say. And this is a really weird inclusion because there were definitely better cards that could have been included in the deck rather than Ophidian, like Thieving Magpie or something. But yeah, 2 and a blue for a 1/3. Whenever it attacks and isn't blocked, you may draw a card, but if you do, it does no combat damage this turn, which is kind of like how these Saboteur abilities used to be. Like if it got through, you get the effect, but in exchange, you don't do the damage. Which is it's all right. It's just a weird card to include, I think. Of all the possible available blue commons at the time to go with Ophidian. I mean, it's still okay. It's still like a card draw when it attacks. It's like decently high toughness. But if you wanted just like a blue common creature that lets you draw cards, I think there were better options than Ophidian, honestly. And then this, I don't understand why this isn't here at all. Water Spout Jin. So 2 and double blue for 4/4. So this is from Mirage or Visions as well. So as 4/4 flyer, at the beginning of your upkeep, you have to sacrifice it unless you return an untapped island you control to owner's hand. So it just keeps setting you back like 1 land drop. And I suppose you say like, oh, it's 1 cheaper than like Air Elemental maybe, so it can come down sooner. But like, I don't know if it's worth it if it's just going to keep setting you back a land because you can't get more land out because you're essentially just keep replaying the one you come back, and like that might be enough. I mean, after all, it's like a 4/4 flyer and stuff, but it means you can't. I don't know, like if you play this turn 4, you can't then get past 4 land, So yeah, it's again really weird why this was included instead of like I don't know, just a second air elemental or something. If I'm missing something really obvious why this is here, then please let me know in the comments because I think this is just not a great choice to have in here. And then we've got 2 Spire Golems, who I love. So 6 mana for a 2/4 flyer. It has affinity for islands, so it costs 1 less to cast for every island you control. So ideally, normally, get this down for 3 mana, which is quite nice, for a 2/4 flyer to only pay 3 mana. So yeah, this is just, I think, a nice little inclusion from Mirrodin or Darksteel, one of the two. And then a single Bottle Gnomes, 3 mana for a 1/3. You can sacrifice to gain 3 life, reinforcements, or refreshments. Yeah, just a couple of artifact creatures to round things out. And again, weird to include artifact creatures. Again, definitely good blue creatures that were around at the time could have been included instead, but no, well, it is what it is. Right, then into non-creature spells. So this is kind of spicy. A single Ancestral Vision. So it's another suspend card, which you have to suspend. You cannot cast it any other way, barring some kind of shenanigans. So suspend 4 for a single blue, and then you just draw 3 cards. So it's Ancestral Recall, but sort of balanced by being a suspend card. Yeah, it's a straight-up card draw spell. You got to wait a few turns for it. I don't believe there's any kind of shenanigans in the deck that let you kind of cast it, like that let you bypass the suspend. So yeah, it's just a card draw spell, which I mean, just a card draw spell, but it's still it's still pretty good, obviously. And then this is the real draw of the deck, honestly, for me. 2 counter spells. Original classic double blue, Say No to Anything, with lovely new artwork of Jace here. Really fantastic. This is so the foil face cards are always artwork that's like face opposed against one another, and I believe this counterspell is also meant to be a single art piece against the Incinerate, which is in Chandra's deck, which has new like Chandra art and stuff. Yeah, really, really cool. Really like there was two of them as well, which is amazing. Also a reason why I picked up 2 of them, so I'd have a full play set of like modern frame counterspell with like this lovely Jace art. So yeah, this was definitely a big pull of the deck. Then we've got 2 Condescends, X and a blue to counter target spell unless it's controller base X, and you get to scry 2, which is quite nice. A single Daze, 1 and a blue. You return an island you control to owner's hand rather than pay Daze's mana cost. Counter target spell unless it's controller pays 1. Silly young me didn't think this was very good at all. Older, more experienced me thinks this is fantastic because any counterspell that is free is obviously incredibly strong. Yeah, being able to return an island just to counter a spell, like, you know, if they tap out and they can't afford the 1, like, you've lost nothing. You can, you know, you can obviously play all your cards. You can tap out. It doesn't have to be an untapped island. So yeah, Daze is really nice, and again, have it here in a modern frame is really good. And this was really nice as well, fact or fiction. So this is the art I think we get all the time these days. But again, this was like new Jace art for it. So 3 in the blue. Reveal the top 5 cards of your library. An opponent separates them into 2 piles, and you choose one, you keep that, and the other one goes into your graveyard. So this is like a really fun like skill testing like mini game. And I think it's just carried across here by the flavor text. Try to pretend like you understand what's important, and yeah, against like a really, it's kind of like bad because like if you do this, play this against like a really inexperienced player, it puts the, like it's so unfair for them to like to know what to put into each pile. And there's, I mean, it basically boils down to 2 schools of thoughts. Like, do you put like all the good stuff into, like, you know, all the good stuff into one pile, like maybe 2 good cards into one pile and 3 kind of okay stuff in another pile, or do you split them up, that kind of thing. But yeah, I think Fact or Fiction is great, and again, having it in the nice Jace art is really good. Yeah, really like this. Single Gush, which was the card I talked about earlier with Fathom Seer. So 4 and a blue, you draw 2 cards, but you can return 2 islands you control to hand rather than pay its mana cost, which is again pretty spicy. If you've like paid all your mana for a turn, you just gush and then draw an extra 2 cards for essentially free, at the cost of setting yourself back 2 land drops, I suppose. But yeah, I think it's okay. Really nice. I think it's actually banned in. I want to say it's banned in Pauper. It's definitely banned in A format, from what I remember, because it's like the combos and the tempo you can get with it is really good. 2 repulses, 2 in the blue, just to do unsummon, withdraw a card, which is just, you know, very standard, like that. And then a single Mind Stone here is a bit of a mana rock, 2 mana. Taps give you 1, or you can pay 1, tap and sacrifice to draw a card, which is just nice. I completely lied there about all that. No way of getting ahead of land, isn't there? Because we've got terrain generator. So taps give you 1 color, so you can pay 2 and tap. You put a basic land from your hand into play tap. So this, you know, is a way of being able to get multiple lands down in a turn. So to counter out like the Gush, the Fathom Seer, I guess the Waterbout Djinn, but it doesn't feel like enough. You know, I still think that the Waterbout Djinn is just a bad card. I think it just should have been something else. I'm not saying Terrain Generator is a bad card. Obviously, like it's a way that blue can get ramp in a way. But yeah, it is what it is. It's a solution to a problem that shouldn't have existed in the first place, you know. And then 23 islands. So I think I agree. You know, we'd probably all like take a look at this deck and think that like it's a bit maybe all over the place, like kind of like Jace himself. Its identity is maybe a little bit muddled. And to be fair, you know, we were still kind of new to the character of Jace, so we hadn't established kind of like what would feel like Jace related cards, I suppose. So that's why we're kind of all over the place with like Suspend and Morph and all this other kind of stuff. Random bunch of elementals, like a kind of, you know, this returning to hand theme with lands. I don't know. It's all a bit all over the place. So there are definitely some changes that I would make to this deck. Mostly I would go with maybe like a comes into play kind of theme, like an ETB kind of thing. So as part of that, you could have Tidewalker here, which comes into play with time counters for every island you control, and we're playing mono blue, so we've got a bunch of islands, and basically it gets weaker every turn because it loses time counters. So that's an option here. It could just be a big sort of vanilla creature. Sage of Epityr is also possibly here. I think this is a really cute little 1-drop. It's just a 1/1. You look at the top 4 cards of your library and put them back in any order. It's Sage Owl without the flying. And then I think to go along with this, could have had a couple of Vidalcan Mastermind, so double blue for a 1/2. You can pay a blue and tap it, and return a permanent you control to owner's hand. And I think that could have been really fun because like we've got a lot of like ETB effects here. We've got like, you know, the Ether Snipe, we've got the Mole Drifter, we've got the Cloudscape. You could potentially have these 2, the Tidewalker and the Sage of Epityr. Yeah, so having stuff like Vidalcan Mastermind to like bounce your stuff back to your hand and like replay it, get a lot of value from ETB effects, I think would have been maybe like more of an identity to the deck, maybe, because as it is, it does feel like quite it does feel a bit all over the place. It does feel a bit hodgepodge. And it definitely felt that way playing it. It's just like, and not in a good way. Not like, oh, I'm going to switch from doing this strategy. I'm now going to switch over to this thing. It was like, my board is a mess of like morph, suspend, random artifact creatures. It was kind of all over the place. But I'd love to know what you think about this deck in particular. Like the first time, kind of Jace got his own pre-constructed product. Yeah, like, do you think it's a bit muddled? Do you think there are cards in here that maybe don't belong in here? Like, do you think there's anything really obvious missing? I'd love to know what you think about this one. Jace does actually get a second appearance in a dual deck, like way down the line, and we'll get to that when we get to that. But I'd love to know what you think about this one in particular. But I'll be back next time, and I'm going to look at the Chandra deck from the dual deck. So I hope you join me for that. But until then, thanks for watching, listening, and have a great day.